welcome into the podcast. I'm Jay. That's Keith. How you doing, Keith? How's it going? Ooh. Oh, nice. I
just got that.
That's good, man. Yeah. Oh, look at the...
Yeah, you got to be careful, though. You don't want to...
What the... Wow. All right, right on. Good deal. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine now. I'm back to normal. I feel a little bit better about myself. And, so we'll...
For those of you that don't know what he's talking about, we started recording this podcast and it only half recorded, so we had to reset.
Yeah. Actually, it's okay. It's all right. It's good. So what do we you want me to describe to folks where we might be going today with this podcast?
Right. So let's tease the topic of the day before we get to the news. Go ahead.
So Wi-Fi, that technology, we thought we'd talk about home Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi in cars and the 5G technology going from 4G to 5G and the progression of the technology over the years and where we're at now. That's what we're going to be talking about. Wi-Fi.
So the challenge, as I see it, is can the parts counter gurus cover the internet?
Ooh, I think
in one single podcast.
I think we can. You want to know why?
I'm all ears.
Well, we'll bring it up in a news topic because we're going to be at live partscounterguru.com.
Did somebody say news?
News of the day.
All right, what's our first topic?
Well,
that album that came out.
That
Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Black Hole.
Oh no. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Well, hey, Black Hole Sun, great song, one of the best albums of great, one of my favorites, Soundgarden, man. And
so I just mixed two.
You crossed over.
Yeah,
and I'm glad you did.
Pop culture references there.
We got the best album, Super Unknown, great song, Black Hole Sun. And the media's picking up on that, and you got people that want to, kind of name it after a certain individual that may have been in the band, named Chris Cornell. So you got people that want to name it after him.
Okay, so say something.
Hello there.
There you are. I don't know what happened. You got real... Okay, so this is actually interesting because this is kind of along the lines of what we're talking about today.
Technology.
You sort of got real radio-y.
Oh, did I get radio-y? How was this?
That's better.
Does that sound okay?
I love technology.
I do as well. So welcome back in,
all
fans.
Right, so this... yeah. So this black hole.
Yeah, the black hole.
Okay, so sorry to pull you off this. So first visual documentation of the existence of a black hole that we know of, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, it is. And how they achieve that is pretty incredible. Numerous devices over the globe and even beyond the globe to put this thing together to bring the image to what we now see. And that's where you got a couple of things where people want to, maybe name it after Chris Cornell, is the fact that the album cover actually kind of looks like the imagery that they created. Isn't it funny how that worked out?
They found a black hole and the album of a black hole on the cover looks like a black hole, so we're going to name it after a black hole.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. This whole thing of celestial bodies being named after, I guess, it's a little bit much, but I guess you got to name them something, right?
Yeah, you do, but I mean, it's like, can I just lay in the middle of a field on a summer night and just look up at something and spot it and go and have it named after me? I can't do that.
Apparently, if you pay $49.95, yes.
Oh, so there's some sort of random lottery program going or something?
Know. There used to be a service that you could mail off, and you'd get a document and back that said that it was named after you, or Well,
I'm not too torn about it. I mean, my opinion on it is that whoever ffound it, and finders keepers, right? I I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
So, or whoever has the $49.95.
$49.95. Yeah, yeah. Wow.
So I am fascinated by this for a very specific reason. Got my time travel shirt on today.
I see that, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Back to the Future, man.
And in everything that I've read about this black hole over the past week, you almost don't see an article on it without the mention of Einstein, and for good reason.
Yeah.
Because he theorized back in his relativity papers. I think this was like 1915 or somewhere in there.
Wasn't it later than that though?
It might have been.
Well,
I mean, don't trust me on that.
he was not a yeah, I would say that was probably when it was. Yeah.
So
time frame.
He theorized that if black holes existed, faster than light travel would be possible, because he did a lot. This was all around gravity, like as I understand it. And I read, I've been fascinated by him for a long time, but he proved that light could bend because of the existence of a black hole, and gravity had a big part to do with that. And so, in theory, if you've got this big black hole that's sucking everything into it, it's distorting gravity, which he also theorized that if we could travel faster than light, we would travel in time.
Ooh, time
so
travel.
To speak.
Ooh.
So, the discovery of a black hole excites me because I start thinking about the possibility of time travel.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what would worry me, time traveling, is if I went through a black hole and I got on the other side, or a wormhole, whatever they are. What we need to talk about, what's the difference between a wormhole and a black hole?
Yeah, I think a wormhole is more of a distortion between areas or universes, or I don't know. Everything I know about wormholes I've learned from sci-fi movies, so I'm not really...
Right, and that's what I'm thinking. I would be a little worried of that type of travel. You go through the hole, and then all of a sudden you end up in a Tholian Web. So anyway, but black holes kind of that's a star that bursts and blows up, and
we think. But what if black holes are actually created when you attempt to time travel, and sort of the universe bends back in on itself?
Ooh, that's interesting. That's a good.
See, I have this friend that in middle school and grade school, he's a really smart guy. I mean, like, scary smart, but he's pretty normal. Like, most
geniuses are a little unique
up in his head.
Yeah,
but he was pretty normal. But he would always say, look, time travel is not going to be possible. Think about it. If it were, we would come back and somebody would come back and tell us.
Well, I think,
right?
Some of your conspiracy theorists would say that the UFOs that we're seeing, that we're claimed to be seeing, are actual time travels from the Earth coming back, or it could be time travelers from beyond. But you never know. So
okay, so
and they have great
possible.
They have great hair.
A lot of gift shop sales in Roswell, New Mexico, counting on.
Yes, there is. And they're not green men anymore, man. They're gray. They're gray.
Yeah, I think the X-Files changed that for us.
Yeah. Ooh, the X-Files.
They went from green to gray.
Yeah, it's a great show. I love Mueller.
It's a documentary. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So okay,
Mulder,
I posited this.
Mulder. Did I say Mueller?
Yeah.
Is that some sort of I
don't know.
Freudian slip?
I believe that would be referred to as a Freudian slip.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of how. So Einstein was famous for these thought experiments, that he could visualize the possibilities of some of this stuff without the technology that we have today. Just to help him, right? So one of the things that I like to play around with, and what's coming now because we've had a practice run at this, but if you could go back, if you could travel in time, any direction, forward or backward, forwards or back, I think it's forward or backward. If there's any English or grammar teachers watching, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Please subscribe for future misspellings.
Yeah, that's a good.
On our YouTube channel.
Is it backwards or backward? go to www.partscounterguru.com and leave a comment there. There's a place on our website.
Ask us a question.
Ask us a question. Go in there and give us the right. Yeah, we'll take it. Is it backward or backwards? Okay.
I think it's backward.
Anyway,
but I know what I would do, and I've played around with this a lot. I mean, there's so many options, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be relatively short time travels for me. I'm going to go back to the 60s.
Yeah.
I'm torn between two things. I'm going to either go to the grassy knoll as my first time travel.
Have you been there?
I
have too.
Yeah. So for the Kennedy assassination to see, right?
Yep.
So
I was there for the 50th anniversary of that, and that was my first trip over there. And the city of Dallas has done a great job of just keeping that in good shape and staying true to what.
There's a memorial right there.
There is.
It's kind of an odd sort of.
Yeah, you got the school book depository, and across the street you got the gift shop and memorial and all that stuff, and then there's the grassy knoll has some things on it as well. But what's really, it was, I wouldn't call it creepy when I was there. It was more of an eerie type feeling. It was very real. But the one thing that really stuck out to me the most was the fact that, everything that you've seen talked about in books or on film, it's all still there. You can go up on the grassy knoll and go behind, the fence and everything where the train tracks are right there. But it's a really compact area. It just seems so much bigger in movies and in pictures, but it's a really small square footage area. It's pretty interesting. I don't know what the actual square footage is of that area, but it's really small. Anyway, so been there. It's pretty neat.
Well, and when you think about like ballistics and the rifle that was used up in the school book depository, and I mean, whether you think he did it or not, that rifle was fired.
Right.
The range that thing had and sort of how much technology has moved in that direction. So the other, so that brings up another topic that's a news topic, which is kind of military technological advancements. But I want to know. So the other thing that I might do is I might go to probably the first Apollo mission to the moon. And assuming that I can time travel, I'm then assuming that I have the ability. If I've got all that tech, then I've got the tech to not only go to a specific time, but a specific place in that timeline. Mm-hmm. So I'd go somewhere, and it's probably inside of NASA, somewhere on the behind the scenes to see.
You'd have,
what's really like, because there's some fishy stuff that I want answers to. Why was the flag waving?
Well, my grandfather went to the grave saying that thing was filmed in a Hollywood studio. The whole moon landing, and I'm not trying to open up this can of controversy here. This is just for my own edification. I just want to know. I'm curious. You are too. I want answers. I want to satisfy this curiosity. I want explanations for why those crosshairs were behind the guy on the moon picture, right? Yeah.
I just want to know.
Yeah. Maybe they did go and they were just trying to kind of Photoshop it a little bit to make it look a little better.
Could be.
Who knows? We don't know. We don't know. We weren't there. But if we could time travel and we could plug in
Jay,
yes.
The truth is out there.
Oh, I know it is. Well,
so where would you go?
Well, it's funny. I wouldn't go to the future. I'm a firm believer in for every action, there's a reaction, and things turn out the way they turn out and how they're supposed to turn out. So I don't touch the future. But if I were to go back in time, I would go back and I would have to be in the studio with Ringo, Paul, John, and George, the Beatles, for that first album. Just to be in the room with such geniuses and how they did it. And of course, they had a great engineer and producer. So
George, the fifth Beatle, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I would love to watch that process and then maybe ride through and up to the Sgt. Pepper's album.
So and you know what's coming here. Okay, so you're standing on this platform of not wanting to alter future. You don't want to go into the future and then come back and have any. You don't want to create a paradox.
Yeah.
But this is difficult, man, because you can mess with time going back as well. This Yoko factor, man. I mean, do you? It's almost the opposite of what Marty does in Back to the Future, where he keeps creating circumstances for his parents to meet and go to the dance and kiss, right?
Right.
You almost would be tempted to take it the opposite direction and keep them from ever crossing paths, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you got to wonder what the rest of the Beatles are thinking with that whole situation. But I think that those guys have they've been kind of amicable about it. And
would you alter? Oof. Would you, if you had let me just say it, okay? If you had the chance to keep Yoko from ever entering the picture, would you?
Wow. Gosh, man. There was a lot of great stuff that John did on his own later because of Yoko. I don't know. I mean, it depends on how big of a Beatles fan you are. I mean, I'm a huge Beatles fan, but I'm also a huge John fan, a huge Paul fan, a huge Ringo fan, a huge George fan. I mean, had that not happened, we may not have had the Traveling Wilburys. We may not have had, Paul McCartney and Wings. We may not have had, I
could do without Wings.
Really? You don't like Wings?
No. Oh boy, I'm about to stir up some controversy here. Paul was much better with the Beatles than he ever was as a solo act or with Wings.
Well, let's conclude that there is one individual that does not even come close to the musical genius that those four had, and let's continue to talk about Yoko.
The cat strangler.
Have you heard any of her stuff?
Oh, it's strangling cats, man.
Well, I've told you my analogy of that. And kids, you can try this at home, kids. If you really want to know what Yoko sounds like, get a balloon, blow it up, don't tie it, but then there you go, man. Let it go, and that's a whole Yoko album. That's enough material. Just saying.
I don't disagree. Okay, so I've got another news topic. So on this thought line of technological advancements, right. And I'm seeing your hat there.
Yes.
Let's get into that. So what's the headwear of choice for the week? That's a cool hat. What's the story with that?
Well, first of all, thank you to all of our active service members and our retired service members and those who have served and everything. Thank you for that. I actually was in service as well, and this was my branch of choice, United States Air Force. But the reason why I'm wearing it is because we were talking about this particular technology, and it's kind of funny how, the military tends to be the proving ground for a lot of the technology that we use today in our everyday lives, such as the electric vehicles, the AI technology, your cellular phone, Wi-Fi. All of those things stemmed from some sort of technology that was probably used in the military. And more specific, the
internet was a DARPA platform, I think, originally.
You know more about that than I do. But what I'm
gonna go with that.
Go with that. Okay, so no, wait a minute though. Who was it invented it though? Was it? No, that was the web. The World Wide Web was. Oh, okay, never mind. I know who that is.
Al Gore.
I didn't want to say it, man. But anyway, yeah, some previous vice president invented the internet. But anyway, the technology that you see in like the Air Force and the Navy, those two branches are highly advanced, and human intervention is, when it comes to a wartime situation with those are you've got your pilots, and typically a lot of those troops are not on the ground in battle. They're usually at a vessel that they're firing missiles or using the technology to track or whatever. So it's.
Well, rumor has it that the Top Gun sequel that's coming out next year.
Yeah, I hear about that.
Is heavily focused on drone technology.
Ooh. You know what? We need to get into a podcast about drones.
Top Gun. Oh,
well, we could talk about Top Gun.
Well, so we should, and the first thing we could maybe talk about is there's drones, which are military unmanned aircraft with wings,
right.
And then there are what people call drones on the consumer level, which are really multi-rotor copters with cameras on them. But see, that's much harder to say than drones. So so my dad was in the Navy. He was a submariner or submariner. He was not a pilot, but I've always been fascinated by naval aviation.
Yeah.
I love the Blue Angels. The Blue Angels were in the news this past week because they announced that they are looking to go to the F-18 Super Hornet.
Yes.
In, I think, 2021. It's the first change that they've had since 1986, I think, is when they started with the original Hornet. And so I grew up in the Midwest, just outside of St. Louis. One of the most technologically advanced military contractors probably in the world was in operation at that time. That was McDonnell Douglas. And they were doing some just fascinating things back then that was really pushing that envelope, which is something you and I talk about all the time on the podcast. We're big fans of it. They had developed the first Hornet. They developed the F-15 Eagle. These are aircraft that, now think about this for a second. They can continue to accelerate while vertical.
Yes.
That's
pretty impressive.
Insane. I mean, you're talking about gravity, right? We started this whole podcast off with, Einstein's take on gravity being more of a consequence. So black holes and that's all a consequence of gravitational forces, whereas Newton saw them more as a rule.
Right.
Einstein saw them as an outcome, as a result. These military, so they were just doing insanely Apple, right? Insanely great things and just mind-bending things during the 80s when I was a kid, and I had friends whose dads worked for them, and they couldn't talk about a lot of this stuff, but just the heads-up displays that they had back then, that now, we have consumer equipment with that stuff in it, and some of the cars, and I mean, just staring at things and creating, with your...
the virtual reality technology that's out there right now that's being used for training and that sort of stuff. I mean, my son, I've talked about him in the past. Some of his first internship stuff was with some Oculus Rift stuff. He really enjoyed working with it, and he's got some VR stuff at home, and I've tried on the headset, and I can tell you right now, guys, that's one amazing technology. It's fun. It's really neat. It's very realistic.
So speaking of technology and the military and gravity and technological innovation,
right?
By the way, the Blue Angels don't wear G-suits. Like, they're one of the only. I think the Thunderbirds do, but they don't, because of some of the maneuvers and stuff that they do. They don't wear them.
Wow.
They train without them.
So they have to do the pump the chest stuff when they're pulling G's.
They're some of the best athletes in the world. Those guys are insane, man.
Yeah. Hey, wasn't it, while we're on the subject of the Blue Angels, wasn't it like, maybe 4 or 5 years ago that we had an unfortunate loss at an air show near you guys? It was a Blue Angel?
Yeah, so it was in Smyrna. It was outside of Nashville. Yeah. There's a monument there to that guy now. Yeah. The result, the investigation showed that he was... I forget that he tried to accelerate too quickly, too close to the ground, or something like that, and it caused it was pretty sad. Like, his chute caught on fire after he ejected, but the chute caught fire as soon as he ejected.
Oh man! Wow.
So this F-18 Super Hornet. So back to everything that has kind of, I feel, that has come out in recent years. You've got the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-22 Raptor. It's kind of, I'll equate it to kind of what Apple has done after Steve Jobs. There are improvements, but they're not leaps forward from what McDonnell Douglas did in the 80s, or leaps forward from what Steve Jobs did with Apple. There's a similarity. I just feel like I'm so hungry for that innovation.
Yeah.
We don't really get those huge leaps anymore.
Right. Well, do you think
the Super
do
Hornet?
you think that they're not? Do you think that they're holding off on the military side? But like, for example, I mean, is it? Are they making those types of leaps in commercial aircraft now, or
not
the airlines?
really. I mean, well, you got SpaceX, you got you've got Amazon that owns a company, and you got Elon Musk who heads SpaceX, who are trying to do consumer stuff in avionics.
Well, we've had the
rockets
recent
and all that.
the recent that big huge, the largest aircraft that was just was the guy from, was it Microsoft or whoever it was?
Yeah. But I mean, is that really like, so you can just, it's just bigger? I mean, is it
no,
really?
no. What they're using it for is they'll tether a rocket from the center of this thing. It's a big, huge, expansive, and it's two fuselages, and then in between they'll have it, and they drop it, and they move on or whatever, and the next thing you know, you're in space. I think it's designed to take people up into space and back.
But how is that much different than Chuck Yeager's Bell X-1, where they dropped him off of, he was carried up with a rocket.
Yeah.
Basically, he was flying a rocket with wings.
Well,
and they dropped him. They got him to a certain altitude, and they dropped him, and he took off. Right? I mean, it is,
but I think the whole concept behind it is to attract more people to want to go up into space.
Okay.
And I think you can't just hop on a single jet and get shot up by a rocket and then come back.
Well,
and,
fair enough.
You got to have somebody doing it for you, I think, because I'm not smart enough to fly a jet, I don't think.
Well, so yeah, but it may fly for you. I've heard these guys talk a lot, like it flies itself. Don't.
Well, that's what some of the pilots say. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the Super Hornet, essentially, the Hornet came out in like the mid to late 70s. I think it was 74.
Yeah.
But the Super Hornet looks the same mostly on the outside, but it's completely different technology on the inside. The pilots say it's much more maneuverable.
Huh.
I actually pulled up an article here. The Super Hornet's nickname was the Rhino. The Hornet and the Rhino are two very different carrier-based aircraft with two very different sets of capabilities. The original Hornet was a multi-role combat aircraft used by, well, pretty much everybody, every branch of military with flight capability.
Wow.
The Air Force went with the Falcon, which is a single-engine General Motors. But let's see, from a pilot's perspective,
that's an interesting aircraft, man.
Basically new except for the shell.
Yeah.
You can take a newly qualified Hornet pilot, put him into the cockpit of the Rhino, and he will still be able to start up, take off, and land. It's that similar, but that's where it stops.
Yeah, kind of almost like the new commercial airline that has, what is it, the Max, that's been having software issues.
Yeah,
because I think
grounded them for a while.
The whole thing behind that whole deal was that most pilots are used to flying the standard version of that, and is it 737? Is that what it was, or whatever? Or,
yeah, I think so. The 737 Max. I think.
And they were saying that the only difference was this type of technology they had for like autopilot. But anyway, it's become an issue for them. But hopefully they'll get that resolved. And I think they're very close. And that's Boeing, not McDonnell Douglas. But
right. Well, Boeing basically bought out or absorbed McDonnell Douglas. A decade and a half ago, I think. Yeah. And
McDonnell,
and then they became the manufacturer of what is now the Super Hornet.
Well, when I was in the service, in the Air Force, one of the birds that they McDonnell Douglas produced, and I think this was Vietnam era, was the F-111 with the swept back wings.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
those are neat aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, those guys were just doing crazy engineering feats back then.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're not getting... I remember hearing... now, they were biased, but I would hear my friends' dads talk, and they were, bids to the government and to the military for the next generation of aircraft.
Yeah.
And they would say, they've got this, like, back when they were separate companies, they would say, like, well, Boeing's working on this one that they've pitched to the government. It doesn't even fly. Like, their prototype, like, they can't even make it fly. Oh. And yet they're trying to sell this to,
the Saudis.
To the U.S. military, and it's just not there yet. And yet McDonald's seem to be a little bit more advanced in their engineering. But the times have changed, and
right.
The same is true for consumer electronics. There's not really that sort of visionary, that groundbreaking advance.
Yeah, they don't have a Steve Jobs anymore.
Yeah,
pretty much.
So we've got a little bit of a moving of the chain in terms of what's on the horizon with cellular internet in 5G.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about, because I'm not sure I really understand that, and just some of the stuff that I've read about with it is that not only is it impacting maybe some sort of environmental concerns. But also, from an aesthetic standpoint, we're used to seeing the big towers out in the middle of the woods somewhere or in a field somewhere. But they actually, in order for this to work, you got to have little, cellular towers, smaller versions, but more of them that you might see strapped to a telephone pole or a traffic signal pole. In the middle of a city, and I know that there's been a little, down in Seattle, they've been talking about, in certain locations they're putting these things too. So what is it, man? I mean, what's this 5G all about? How is it better? What is it? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about sort of where to go with this, because there's so many different directions. I think we can kind of cover the important. So and you might think, well, what are you doing talking about the internet when this is a Parts Counter Guru show?
It has a
cars now are heavily integrated with certainly electronics, internet capabilities. Some of that you have control over, some of it you don't. In the sense that some of them will send service alerts to the dealership when it's time, whether or not you want your car to do that or not.
OnStar,
and then they call you.
OnStar for GM is their big deal.
And then there's mobile hotspots. So there's definitely, in Tesla, we can't go a week without talking about Tesla, but they heavily integrated with pushing software updates to their cars. Some of the other manufacturers can do it as well. So I think it's a valid topic because there is such a marriage of the two these days. And I think maybe where we start with this is, let's talk about the types. So when you talk about the internet, and you actually kind of a little bit earlier said, well, we've got the internet and then the web, and those are two separate things. One relies on the other. But in thinking of the internet, what we're basically talking about is connectivity to a network, right? And there are 3 or 4 different types of internet services or service providers out there, ISPs. We can get into an acronym rabbit hole here.
Hey.
But you've got cable, which is, I would guess, probably the most popular in the United States. You've got the old telephone line system, which in other countries is still somewhat used, right? Dial-up modem.
Right.
So they're using copper phone lines.
Oof.
It's a twisted pair.
You hope it doesn't rain and there's a, whatever.
You've got fiber, which is a relatively new technology. And then you've got variations of fiber, like what they call fiber to the pole or FTP. That's where they'll run fiber into your neighborhood, but they will not run it all the way to your house because it's too expensive. And then they'll tell you it's fiber, which is not true. And then you've got wireless. Now, wireless covers things like cellular, the Wi-Fi that you have in your home, right? Hotspots at Starbucks or down, in cities, whatever, that have Wi-Fi. That's all wireless versions of of radio signal of internet, right? And I guess I should probably say, for those of you that are watching this going, hey man, what do you know about the internet? What qualifies you to talk about this, huh?
Yeah, so tell me.
I'm not an,
so tell our audience what makes you an expert on this.
Well, I'm not probably an expert, but I certainly don't know all there is to know.
I would beg to differ, but go ahead.
By the time I was, I think, 35, I had like 15 years in wireless telecom. So I got into the cellular side really to pay my way through college, and started with companies like Cellular One and Ameritech, and went to, I think Cellular One became Verizon.
Yeah, wasn't it like Bell South Mobility? Then they were they were eaten up by AT&T. And
I actually, when Sprint PCS back in the day, when they opened their doors, I was an employee.
Yeah,
worked for them for several years. Left before the merger with Nextel.
Right.
So anyway, it was weird to look back at age 35 and go, wow, I've got like a decade and a half on this.
Yeah, and let's talk about that whole progression too. I mean, 15 years ago, where we've come, because I think, a lot of people, the question is, why do I need 5G? What's the 5G? And there's benefits on both sides, really. The benefit for the consumer is, the experience. That's why you want faster download speeds and those sorts of things. So 5G gives you that capability, and Keith's going to get into it a little bit more, but it's a win-win for the provider too, because they're able to supply you more content. And that's what they're trying to do. Faster, and they're just trying to cram as much or give you as much as you possibly can get, and charge you accordingly.
So, I just sent you a link, Jay, in our chat system. But so let's talk a little bit about speeds, because this is all, like, you've been dancing around this and a couple things that you've said. So if you look at this chart, the data chart. Now I get these mixed up from time to time too, so even I have to kind of reference things. You have a bit, which is your most basic, smallest. It's like if it were biology, it would be on the atomic level, right? That's your smallest piece of data. It's usually a 1 or a 0. It's one single piece of information.
Right.
Then you go to a byte, which is 8 bits. And so, kids, we're going to harken back to the metric system, because this is all based around kind of a metric system principle. So if you remember in grade school, learning about the metric system and how everything is basically in multiples of 1,000, this is very similar.
Yep.
So you start with a bit, then you go to a byte, which is 8 bits. Then you go to a kilobyte, which is, people often just refer to it as 1,000 bytes. That's close. It's usually 1,024, so 1024. Everything is a multiple of 8, so it's going to be 1024.
Right.
All right. We can say 1,000 if that keeps it, simpler. Then you get into a megabyte, which is 1,000 kilobytes or 1,024 kilobytes. Right. Then a gigabyte, which is 1,000 kilobytes. Then a terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes. Then a petabyte, which is 1,000 terabytes, and an exabyte, which is 1,000 petabytes, so on, right? Okay, so when we are talking about internet speeds, that is typically megabits per second.
Right.
And the slang for that, if you go look on like your service provider, your ISP, they'll go, you got a 25 megs, your download is 25 megs.
Right.
Now that's a little bit misleading, and here's why. Because people assume that if they have something that they want to download and it's 1 megabyte and they have a 1 meg internet service, that they will take 1 second for them to download that. Yeah, it's actually what you have is megabits per second, which is 1/8 of a megabyte. Right. So it would actually take 8 seconds to download that. It's confusing.
Well, it is,
I know.
Until you learn it.
I didn't develop the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is until you learn it. Yep.
When we talk about speeds, everything is typically measured in megabits. Megabits, which is smaller than megabytes. And it's I wish they would change that, but it's too embedded now, and it's just going to stay that way.
So let me get this straight. Let me make sure I understand this so that there's no misunderstanding. When the internet talks about download speeds of, say, 100 megs, right?
They're megabits,
They're megabits,
right?
not megabytes.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood.
So you divide that number by 8 if you want to compare it to megabytes.
Right.
And that'll tell you.
Okay.
Okay.
Understood.
So now there are two sides to your internet service. There's a download speed and an upload speed. Okay. And what you're trying to use that service for is a factor on both those directions, down and up. So let me give you some examples. If you're streaming a show on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime Video, that's download. Right. Traditionally, people have been more focused on the download speeds than the upload speeds because they're consuming content. They're pulling it down. If you host a website like we do, that's an upload for us because when you go to our website, our web server is uploading data to your computer. So we care more about the upload speed. If you watch videos on YouTube, please, by the way, go to our YouTube channel. You can find that by going to partscountergurus.com. And there's a podcast links section. How am I doing, Jay?
You're doing great.
And click on that podcast link section. You've got all the different ways you can listen to the podcast. You can watch us on YouTube. Please be a subscriber on YouTube. That would help us out a ton.
Yes, click subscribe. It's free.
That's right. Subscribe. It's free. It actually, yes. So when you watch a YouTube video, you are downloading that video, and so the download speed matters to you. But to Google, the upload speed matters. It's how quickly they can send you that video, right? So, and here are some baselines. If you're streaming a standard definition video, a 3 megs down is sufficient, typically. Now, that's if there's nothing else going on in your house. You're going to pull about 3 megs a second. That's megabits per second download speed, and you'll be able to watch that video. If it's HD or 4K, it's 5 megs. If you're doing gaming, that's about 5 megs.
Typically, gamers like higher download speeds.
Gamers also like the upload to be pretty quick, too.
Absolutely,
now,
they do, because typically they're working with other people and interacting, yes.
Most of these companies, the ISPs, will give you huge amounts of download speed, but very little upload speed.
Correct.
And, Jay, you might think to yourself, well, why would I care about upload speed?
Why would you?
Okay. It's funny that you would ask that. As technology advances and we sort of innovate and push the envelope, we have more things in our connected homes that require upload. So here we go, pushing the envelope, home automation, all things we've talked about on the podcast before. Let's say you have Wi-Fi cameras at home and you want to check to see what's going on at your house while you're away.
That's right.
The upload speed from your house to the internet is what determines whether or not you're going to be able to watch that video remotely.
Yes. That is correct.
So if it's an HD camera, I already gave you the number. You've got to have 5 megs per second up to be able to watch that video, approximately.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
A lot of people don't have that. If you've got multiple things going on, say somebody's streaming a podcast like we are, and my wife's trying to look at a webcam or a streaming camera video, well, now you got to have more than that.
Yep.
So you got to think about what your requirements are to match that up with the type of internet service that you go with.
Right. And, how this plays in, too, is, we're talking about upload. You're talking about uploads. I mean, let's name some common things that people, that may not know that they use it for upload speeds, for, like emailing, for example. If you're
email attachments,
if you're like,
documents,
you want to send your mom or your dad, 10 photos, JPEG images that it has to upload. And
if you're on your cell phone, here's another one.
Yep.
and you want to send a text message to your buddy, because we all like these animated GIFs and these memes. I sent Jay one yesterday of a butt.
Yeah.
Just because that's who I am. Right?
Yeah, and I did laugh. I understood it.
I'm on my home Wi-Fi. Typically, they're using the Wi-Fi, not the cellular network, to send those attachments over your messaging service.
Right.
And now, if you're not on the internet, if you don't have Wi-Fi on your phone, then it'll default to the cell service. But that's an upload.
Right.
Email attachments, we already talked about that. VoIP calls, if you have some sort of phone system or Skype system, or you're doing a video chat.
FaceTime on Apple products.
FaceTime. Yep. You're transmitting video up to the cloud, and the upload speed as well as the download speed, because now you're pulling down a video of the other party and you're watching that and you're sending them one.
Yeah, and you have several.
So that's another one.
Yeah, and you have several versions of that. WhatsApp is one. Google Duo. What is that? What is the one with Pixel? The Pixel? Is there?
Well, Pixel's a phone,
right? But they have what service do they use? Is that?
Well, they were using it's Duo, I think.
Is it Duo still? Yeah.
So Hangouts is being discontinued, and they're switching to some new Google Hangouts. But yeah, that's you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. What can you think of any more that are more upload dependent? And I can't. I'm kind of out. But
actually. Any like file share?
File sharing? Now, if you have like a Dropbox or a Google Drive, or what's the third one that I'm not thinking of here? Microsoft has a SkyDrive.
SkyDrive, I think it is, yeah. And then think of Skype, like Skyping. If you're Skyping, you gotta have good uploads.
When you put that file in your Dropbox or your Google Drive, it then uploads from your computer to the Google Cloud. So how fast that syncs out depends on your upload speed on the internet.
Two really common apps out there that people use: Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah,
that require,
and they have a chat. Video.
You can
service that goes along with that product as well.
That's right. You can go live with Facebook Live, and that's uploading. So
let's do this. So we have a page on our website called Mentioned on the Podcast, and we're going to put links to some of the stuff we talked about on this podcast on our website, which is, what's our web address, Jay?
www.partscounterguru.com. Do you guys know what the WWW stands for? Go ahead, Keith.
World Wide Web.
That's it. And it was invented by
Al Gore.
Yes.
So I'm going to we'll put a link to this on the Mentioned on the Podcast page on our website, which Jay just gave you the address. If you want to check your speed with your current ISP, speedtest.net is a good one.
Yep.
Go to speedtest.net. It will give you both your upload and your download speed.
I use that.
Now you know what you need those for. Yeah,
I use that.
It's pretty common.
Yeah,
they have an app. You can put it on your phone.
I have that app actually on my Apple TV as well.
Yeah,
and
it's handy.
And I use it. Everything I do in my home.
I know where you're going. I'm glad you're going there.
So
it's everything you do in your home is
wireless. Everything.
Okay.
Everything.
Perfect.
I have cable. I have a cable provider who also provides. They're my ISP as well.
TV and internet.
TV and internet. ISP stands for Internet Service Provider. If you didn't already know that. But I am hands-free on everything. I don't like to be hooked up to the wall. I don't like to have multiple cables.
This is perfect.
You know? There's perfect. It's the convenience factor for Wi-Fi. So yes, everything I do is wireless.
So now, when do you and so let's get into a little bit of the different types of internet service you can buy.
Right.
And we're going to get into specifically, I think, the automotive side of that in the 5G. But Wi-Fi, you need to understand that anything that you do on Wi-Fi is going to be slower at this time in our current technological capabilities here in 2019. If you are wired, you are going to have a faster connection than you will on Wi-Fi, almost always.
Right.
So there are factors in wireless, like how far you are away from the signal, whether that's the base station in your home or the cell tower. how many solids the signal has to pass through, and the signal degrades or slows down depending on the distance you are from it, how the obstacles in the way, interference, it's radio signal, so any interference that it has to sort of clear up or filter out. So know that if you are speed testing over Wi-Fi or wireless, you are only going to be as fast as your Wi-Fi is, and you may actually have a faster service coming into your house through your cable modem or whatever, but you may only be showing half that speed because you're on Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Now.
Exactly. Tell them what they need to do to make sure that they maximize.
Okay.
Yes?
Here are the basic types of service. We already touched on these briefly, but you have cable, you have telephone, you have fiber to the pole, and you have wireless. Okay?
Right.
The two fastest options right now are cable and fiber.
Yes.
The fiber to the pole thing, where these guys are coming in and they're going, there's fiber in your neighborhood. We just brought fiber into your neighborhood. These guys come to my door like once a week. There are two things. First of all, the upload speed is awful. It's awful. And the reason the upload speed is awful is because they're bringing that fiber to the pole or to a box in your neighborhood, and then they're using phone lines from there to your house.
Right.
Now copper phone lines.
It's an infrastructure issue. It costs a lot.
Yep.
It costs a lot of money.
It's expensive.
Yes.
It's expensive to run that last mile of fiber. Copper is notorious for degrading signal quickly, and so usually a mile is kind of the limitation for reliable internet speed.
Right.
So you're not really getting copper. You're limited to the top speed of that. I'm sorry, you're really not getting fiber. You're limited to the top speed of that copper between your house and wherever their fiber terminates, right? So from your house to the pole.
And
I don't like fiber to the pole. It's a ripoff. You're not getting fiber, and they're telling you you're getting fiber. Get there. I just said
you
it.
did. Exactly. Okay. And that's good. And that kind of, let's hit on the note, because you and I both have experienced this with a specific place that we used to be employed.
Yeah.
And you were the visionary, really, in my opinion, to move this particular company over to a VoIP type phone system. Now, what VoIP is, it's voice over internet.
Yeah,
right.
Voice over IP.
Right,
and it's just translating your phone to a digital signal and sending it over the internet.
Right. This is why it's so important to have upload download capabilities.
Yeah.
And it plays into business. Now, some of the older businesses that have transitioned over into this technology, they're only as good as that coming into the building originally. And some of these buildings are old, and we experienced that with copper lines. How many times did you have to deal with the system being down?
Copper sucks, man. It just sucks.
Right. So
it just sucks.
That's just you can actually, stop your business. Commerce will end in certain cases because you don't have proper cable or fiber coming into the building. You're having to deal with copper. So there you go. I just want to throw that in there because it's very crucial.
All right, so now let's get back to your question about wireless or Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll get into the car portion of this at the end.
Right.
So Apple is, people may not know this watching it, but Apple is really an innovator they were the first company to have a mesh network at the consumer level. So if you bought these airports, Apple called their Wi-Fi system Airport, you could pair them. You could have multiple airports in the same house on the same network, and it would extend the range of your wireless because these things acted like repeaters. And it was really great. And they were years ahead of their time in doing that. That has really just caught on in the past year and a half. Apple has now gotten out of the Wi-Fi game. I think their airports have all been discontinued. They're more interested in TV shows and credit cards now, but that was the previous podcast, right?
Right.
That was podcast 15?
Yes, I think so. 15 or 16. Yeah, 15. Yes.
Car wash.
Car wash.
Part one. So I just took a little dig at Apple if you didn't catch that. But there are some companies that have stepped up and really, really done a good job of filling that void.
Correction, 14.
Oh, thanks. See, this was I can't.
You can't do this.
So I got you, man.
Yeah. I'm your anchor guy, man. I'm your wingman.
Thank you. So if you're gonna go wireless, and I understand why, Jay, it's a convenience thing.
It is,
and I have it too, and it's super super convenient to be able to just walk from room to room and have Wi-Fi. Get a good one. Get a whole home mesh system. Now, there are 3 or 4 companies out there that have entered this game. You might ask, well, who are these companies?
Who are they? Who are these companies?
So you've got Netgear with their Orbi system, or Orbi, O-R-B-I,
right?
Which I've actually tested and I hated it.
Yeah.
You've got, believe it or not, Comcast Xfinity has their own. They look like little hockey pucks that they're developing.
Yeah.
Google has one as part of their Google Home outfit. They look like little hockey pucks. My favorite is the Linksys Velop.
Yeah.
And there are some other third party ones that are pretty good. I use the Linksys Velop. I have recommended it to many, even small businesses. It's not just for consumers. Cisco is the parent company of Linksys. They bought them about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And they are really, Cisco is probably the networking company for for business, for large scale businesses.
Sure.
So what you want, if you're going to go whole home Wi-Fi and you have a house bigger than, let's say, 800 square feet, or an apartment bigger than 800 square feet, or a condo, you're going to need more than one of these things.
Yeah.
And they need to overlap, meaning you don't put one at the very end of the range of the other one. You have to put it, 2/3 of the way in, so that it's not such a weak signal that it can't repeat it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I'm fortunate. I live in 1,000 square feet, or just a little more. So
yeah,
and I have a repeater.
You would need 2 or 3. Yeah,
I have 2.
Okay,
and it's flawless. I mean, it works very well, and I even back up wirelessly. By the way,
yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
Apple still, if you can get your hands on the Apple stuff, it still accommodates that.
Yep.
Now, we're gonna talk. We're gonna put some of these recommended products on our website, mentioned on the podcast page for this episode. Here's a term that you need to hang on to if you're shopping for whole home Wi-Fi. You want tri-band, as in 3 channels, three bands, not channels, 3 bands.
Right.
Think about this. Here's an analogy for you. Okay, Jay. So you've got a 2-lane road.
Yes.
Right? Like country road, or just a 2. So you've got 1 lane where traffic goes this way, and you've got 1 lane where traffic goes that way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, when you start putting a lot of cars on that road, it gets pretty congested. There's a lot of stop and go.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of waiting sometimes.
Right.
It's slow. It can be, right? If there's no traffic on it, then you can zip,
you're
right?
zooming, yes.
So if you have dual band Wi-Fi, which is a lot of what the older stuff is, you are on a 2-lane road.
Right.
So you have upload and download taking place on 2 channels. If you put more than one base station, as I punch the mic over here and almost rip my headphones off, those repeaters have to talk to each other on that same 2-lane road.
Right.
They have to use the same lanes for traffic that you do when you're watching your Netflix program. If you go to a tri-band system, your repeaters have their own relay. They have their own lane on the interstate that they can use to communicate. Then you've got 2 other bands that can be used for everything else, right?
Right.
Tri-band's the way to go. Some of the newer phones and laptops and wireless devices have a higher in speed in networking, and that will have its own band, and then the G or the AG or the A, or so they're separating frequencies, bandwidth, right? Band.
Right.
And they have multiple wireless cards that can handle all those traffic lanes. So tri-band is definitely the way to go.
So here, explain this to me and our audience. So when you're, how when you'll fire up your laptop or your PC or whatever, and you're running wireless, and it comes up and it has discoverable internet or IPs out there. Like you'll see the different names like John's
open networks or
networks around, right?
John's iPhone,
right?
Yeah,
and it'll show you what's in very close proximity to you. You have all of these people that are doing the same thing you're doing. How does that affect having the tri-band? Does that help that issue?
Oh, it does. So you're at different frequencies now. On each frequency, there are multiple channels.
Yeah,
and this gets kind of deep, but in a lot of cases, it's 12 channels per. So if you have neighbors and you live in a condo. Mm-hmm. You can both be on the same, in frequency, but there's multiple channels so that you're not conflicting in bandwidth with your neighbor. Now, remember the cordless phones in the 90s where you could, before they started digitally encrypting them, where you could sometimes turn your phone on and you could hear your neighbor's conversation?
Yeah, I've actually had that happen, and
the same
and shamefully
principle.
I listened.
Yeah, well, it's fun. Oh man, in my days in cellular, we would open, when it was analog, we would open a channel and just listen to all the call traffic going on the tower. Now I was an employee of the company, so I was
Yeah, you. That's what you do. I mean, you have.
I could do that, right?
Yeah.
I could be creepy and listen all I wanted. Okay. So channel interference is a factor.
Yep.
That's another advantage to the tri-band stuff.
Right.
When you think about speed testing, you also are going to be better off with tri-band because now that 2-lane road that allows you to get out to speedtest.net isn't clogged down.
Right.
You're on a 4-lane highway, right? And you're all going the same direction.
Yeah.
So that's where the Wi-Fi factor of speed comes in. So if you are thinking about, I highly, highly, highly recommend the Linksys Velop system, and we'll put a link to those. If you're gonna do this, that's a great. It's got the router built in to the mesh system. Now the router is the device that routes traffic, if you will. It connects to your cable modem. You have to have a router.
Right.
Sometimes the cable company will give you one. It's better if you buy your own because then you can keep them out of your house stuff.
Now, due to regulatory, is it the FCC? Is that right? That
FCC is because it's radio signal.
Correct.
Yep.
They control all this. So because of that, don't they have a mandate that all of these devices have to be pretty much compatible across the board? In other words, Linksys puts out their version of this technology, and brand X over here puts another version. Now, how well it works is on the company itself.
They will work together in the same way that an OBD2 connector will work on any vehicle.
That is the point I'm trying to make.
But you are always better off to stick with the same brand if you're going to connect multiple networking devices, because they may write lines of code in their equipment that it's designed to work, that maximizes the efficiency. Wow, what's wrong with me? That maximizes the efficiency. I'll get it out. If you use their other components made by them.
Right.
Yeah, they can control that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it makes sense. I mean, it's from a compatibility standpoint, you want, it just kind of works well together. That's why I've said this before on previous podcasts, I'm an Apple guy. Everything I own, with the exception of one mobile device, is Apple, and that includes my network in my home. Everything that I use.
Now, but you're not going to be able to buy that stuff new anymore because they've discontinued the airports. Now you've got to make a change.
That is correct.
So I really like the Linksys Velop. It's rock solid. It's crazy fast. The Netgear Orbi, which you see a lot at Costco and stuff. So I had a lot of issues with those satellite stations, which is what they call the repeaters, losing sync with each other.
Sure.
And their tech support is just not good. It's there's two things about, I don't like it when companies do this. So, you get a warranty on this stuff. It's usually a year.
Right.
Netgear actually plays this game of so they will give you something like 30 or 60 days of support, and then you have to pay for it after that. So and their support's pretty bad. Like, I could tell the guy was just reading the manual while I was talking to him, and this was pretty complex problems. Like, this isn't, turn it off, turn it on to fix it kind of stuff.
Right.
Again,
goes back to counter people. We talked about it in a previous episode about what's happened to the service. They're just plugging.
Linksys is owned by Cisco, who is a little bit of a heavier hitter.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to know their stuff better. They tend to have better customer support, and they don't play that 90-day game for.
Right.
If it's under warranty, you get free support, or it's included support, I guess I should say.
Right.
It's the best. It's the best. Now, the Velop system does have a dual band version. I really recommend, if you're going to spend any money at all, get the tri-band. It's a little bit more expensive. It is if you're doing this, you're doing it to get the speed you need. Get the tri-band system.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, ironically, Netgear does make some good routers.
Yeah.
So if you don't need repeaters and you have a small area, the Nighthawk line has been kind of rock solid among gamers for the past 3 or 4 years. It's really good.
Yeah. Nothing
wrong with going. So basically, if it's a Netgear product that's fantastic that you don't ever need to contact their support for, go with it.
Yep.
The router is a great example of that.
Right.
That would be one that I would recommend for a router.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right on. Yes, this is great information for any of you guys out there. I tell you, this is a good topic. I mean, so that in home, man. I mean, you've pretty much covered everything, and we're going to talk about 5G and what it actually is.
Yeah, so
we'll talk about.
You want to get
too.
into 5Gs and
let's
cars?
do that. But in the cars and to backtrack a little bit, why we wanted to lay the foundation with what your in-home network does is that's where the 5G technology comes, because if you have an in-home wireless community going on inside of your house, that enables you to do some things that you otherwise couldn't do with some of the technology within cars now and with that are on phones. So there you go. It's important because
the Velop system will actually let you prioritize devices. It's another cool feature that it has. Like you could say, like, hey, Dad's iPhone is number one on the network, man. So if those traffic lanes get busy, I'm in the express lane, baby. I'm doing 100 miles an hour. The kids watching Netflix and my wife doing whatever, man. Shh. I put myself at the top.
Nice. Priorities.
So it does have that. Or just like screen time. If you're trying to control that and you don't want, like on a school night, it'll let you like cut the device off on a schedule.
Right.
And you can look at reports. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So 5G, which is a mobile technology, means it's a cellular company here in the United States platform. It's internet provided by cellular companies.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. Coming off towers.
Right.
Okay. 5G it's just fifth generation.
Right. Fifth generation. Everybody,
Yep.
I came into the cell phone, I think the first G series phone was a 3G.
Yeah.
That I got.
So, they kind of skipped the second generation.
Yeah.
It was there, but not a lot of companies adopted it, and they went right to 3G.
Right. 3G, then 4G, LTE, and that's
LTE and 4G are kind of synonymous. LTE stands for long-term evolution.
Right.
It was just they're just what they called 4G.
Right.
4G and 5G are going to coexist for a long time. So don't think that 5G is going to immediately replace 4G because there's some pretty significant differences. Here, I guess let's start with let's talk a little bit about speed. Do we want to go? So the advantage of 5G over 4G in the most simplest explanation I can give is it's a speed boost.
Right.
It's going to be faster in both directions.
And everybody wants that. I mean, how many times you hear people, you're out somewhere and somebody asks you a question like, "Hey man, do you know what the score is in the Titans game or the Mariners game?" Boy, a bunch of losers there. But anyway, and you want to know what's going on. And sometimes you start seeing the bar go across and it just hangs up.
Yeah.
So 5G, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, and I can actually explain that. Okay, so this ties right back into kind of what we've already talked about. So the differences in 4G and 5G have a lot to do with tri-band, right? We just talked about tri-band for home Wi-Fi.
Yep.
The number of traffic lanes that these cellular data transmissions can happen in simultaneously.
Right.
And some of this I had to write down because I don't remember all this, but the theoretical top speed for 5G is between 1 and 10 gigabits per second download speed. So that's right. That's in line with fiber.
Yeah, that's fast.
And 1 millisecond latency the. Now, we haven't gotten into latency yet. Should we talk about that?
I would, yeah. I think it's important to everyone understand what latency the.
So the most basic, the easiest explanation I can give you for latency is the amount of time it takes for the router or the cable modem in your home to talk to your ISP. How much of a delay is there? How much latency between the time that you send a piece of data out the door of your internet at your home to your cable provider? Usually that's measured in milliseconds, so it should be less than a second. And if your internet is healthy, it should be less than 30 milliseconds.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but on the speed test apps that we have, you can see
it'll show you
can see the latency,
Yep.
and that's
Absolutely.
you might want to explain to people from a visual standpoint what they're looking at there when you see latency.
If you see more than 30 milliseconds of latency, something is not connected right, or there's a bottleneck somewhere. It's worth opening a ticket or making a call to support to get them to fix that.
And let's talk about
it. Will cause jitter. If you're doing a video conference, it could cause choppiness. What you just talked about, where you're trying to upload something and it stops.
Right.
It'll do that because it's having to resync.
Right.
It's
so you'll get when you first initially, how it asks you to select a server that you want to log into for your speed test, and you get the ping.
Yeah.
Right.
The ping is latency.
There you go.
A ping is the most basic. It's a packet of data. It is a single cell organism going out to some server for a response. So it's a very, very small piece of data. We're not measuring how long it takes to download. We're measuring how fast it travels.
That's right. So a ping, or a quick return on a ping, indicates
low latency or no latency.
Exactly, which is a good thing.
Then we move into large packets or packages of data, and then the next step or the next phase in that speed test is, okay, I'm going to send this server a 30 meg file. How long does it take to get there and back? Right? That's your upload and download.
Yep. Okay.
But a ping is just a single byte of data or, a bit of data, and it's should be lightning fast. Okay?
So to translate that, early on when partscountergurus.com was beginning these podcasts, I was experiencing some latency issues, and we resolved those through some trial and error.
Made you sit on your desk,
made me sit on
wear
my
tinfoil hat.
Exactly, and I had to buy a canary, and everything. I have to keep it in the room here. He's quiet right now. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but anyway,
gas leak.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's an interesting factoid. Now, this is a little bit off the nerd deep end, but I'm going to put this out there. So 4G base stations typically have about 12 antennas to send and receive data. 12. Okay. 5G base stations might support 100 antennas.
Ooh.
Okay. Now, here's why that matters. So let's say you're at a sporting event, you're at a hockey game, or you're at a football game, and there's a whole bunch of other people.
Right.
They're going to hit that same tower. It's the tower that's closest to them. So the more antennas, the more simultaneous connections, the more lanes of traffic you can travel down, the wider the highway, right?
Yep. And keep this in mind.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes completely good sense. And I'll give you a real life example. Going to a football game, into a large stadium, right? The whole goal of that team is to create an experience that's very enjoyable and flawless for you at the end of the day, so that the amount of money that you've spent, you can walk away going, man, that was great. But one of the number one complaints that I heard early on in some of these stadiums was, you got a friend that's sitting on the other side of the stadium, and you want to say, hey, did you see that play, or did you see anything, and the text just doesn't go through. That's because they have issues of being able to get that data across, because they have very limited capabilities. But what I had seen within recent years is most of your larger venues have gone in and put in repeaters like we talked about. So they have, the fans have a larger road to go down, if you will. the frequency
Yeah.
is okay. I mean,
There's more lanes.
You pack in 68,000 people. There's going to be most likely. I'm going to say you're going to have 60,000 phones. I mean,
well, and as
that's
we get
probably
more
loaded.
high def devices
Yeah.
that are streaming larger files,
Right.
that take up more bandwidth,
That's
right?
it.
This all sort of forces
Yes.
that issue of broadening the highway, right?
Right.
The virtual highway.
And that's
so to
what
speak,
5G
right?
is doing to be able to use that service too. In a way, they're putting
Yep.
all these little
Yep.
towers everywhere. We talked about it early on. I mean, the Tholian Web, man.
You love that.
I do.
So let's get into, I want to talk about specifically how this affects cars and the vehicle application side of mobile internet.
Yeah,
or
that's a big
broadband.
deal. That's a big deal.
But before, we'll get to that. That'll be the last thing. But right before we get to that, I want to throw in this interesting, I found this fascinating. Now, if you're not a nerd like me, this may not be, you may not care. But, okay. And I was trying to think about how to explain this. It's real sciencey, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around it.
Come on, McFly.
5G's got a little bit of, there's an interesting side effect here of 5G. So everything on Earth, everything, as far as I know, emits microwaves on some level. Some more than others, some less than others.
Right.
And microwaves travel at frequencies.
Right.
Okay? The weather equipment that we use, at least here in the United States, and probably most of the rest of the world, relies on frequency detection for water vapor.
Right.
So in other words, like if they're looking at, we call it radar. What's the radar show? Is it raining? Oh, look, it's raining west of here, right? And then radar shows, well, radar again is just radio signal, right?
Right.
And radio waves. And so there are frequencies that water vapor tends to be the most responsive. And that frequency for water vapor happens to be about, and I wrote this down because I don't have it memorized, 23.8 gigahertz. Okay. So when they're doing their sort of rain detection or their forecasting, that frequency is closely tied to the existence of water vapor in the atmosphere.
So in other words, the radar that you see on the newscasts for live data is using that frequency.
23.8 tends to be where a lot of the equipment
and that's
looks.
a Doppler radar, right? Is what they call it, Doppler.
Well, Doppler is
Is that what it is?
That's a terminology that defines the response.
Yeah.
And the physics with the amount of time to respond and
way over my
the proximity you are from that object and and the pitch and frequency and all that. Okay.
I'm more in tune with the Farmer's Almanac, man. Anyway.
Okay. Well, yeah. Guess what else hangs out at the 23.8 gigahertz frequency?
I knew you were going there, man. Really? So what are they going to do?
5G.
What are they
5G. So they're thinking that if they start putting up a whole bunch of these 5G towers everywhere, it's going to screw up a lot of the weather forecasting equipment because it's going to think it's raining all the time.
Holy moly. So they can't, there's no way to flip a switch or to pick a different channel or anything? I mean, there's not...
Well, so you would mention the FCC earlier.
Yeah.
So the FCC regulates... And and ironically, we joke that Al Gore created the internet or the web. He actually was in office during the time that the FCC started to auction off frequencies in the United States. They called them spectrums.
Right.
And he would sell the government for revenue, for a shot in the arm. They would sell off these spectrums. And if you owned that spectrum, you had the right to broadcast in it in the United States. Okay. So the 5G devices, they have paid for the licensing to use that spectrum. So they can't refuse them access to it just because people's weather devices are listening on that same spectrum. Because the people with weather devices, I don't think, are paying for the licensing. They're not broadcasting. They're listening. They're receiving. They don't have to have a license to you don't have to have a license to turn on your car radio and listen to the radio.
Right.
You don't have to have a license to listen to satellite radio. Now, you have to pay a service fee because it's encrypted, but it's being broadcast. You could pick it up. You just can't decrypt it.
Right.
You don't have to have a license to put a TV antenna, which is still coming in over radio waves, on your house and watch television.
Right.
So the same with the weather equipment. You don't have to have a license to receive data. It's out there. It's freely available. you have to have a license to broadcast, which the 5G providers have paid for.
Gotcha.
So it's not their problem.
Right. Wow. So this will be interesting to see how this rolls out, and because we are so reliant upon forecasts in every way, shape. I mean, the Weather Channel was not created for, just a bunch of people pointing at, funny shapes on the wall.
Yeah.
It's there. I mean, the advances that have been made in weather forecasting is pretty incredible. Now they just so okay.
I joke about it a lot, but yeah, you can tell. I mean, they're pretty. The fact that a 10-day forecast even exists,
right?
Like, even though it's not precise, it's going to rain at the end of the week. That's pretty helpful,
right?
Like, we couldn't do that 50 years ago, I don't think.
Right. Now, exactly. Now, here's I mean, exactly. No doubt about it. I mean, technology is so unbelievable. I had my grandfather in the backyard going.
Well,
yeah, it's going.
I think it was the second one where he went into the future, and the joke was, it's going to stop raining in a minute, and then it stops, and he goes, "Man, these weather forecasters now." It was Back to the Future Part 2.
There's that.
Yeah.
Space-time continuum.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah. So, okay. Well, here's what I want to talk about with this. All right. So we talked about the radar. Now, some people might think, well, how's that going to be a problem? Because didn't we just launch like a bunch of satellites up there for weather, which is actually, and you correct me if I'm wrong, has no affiliation to the actual radar on the ground.
That's imaging.
That's exactly
that's
right.
Looking at infrared, but cloud cover.
Cloud cover, your water vapor images, your
right.
Just satellite imagery, and
that's less radio signal,
exactly.
more visual.
Right. So that is, they can see the big picture with that, but you cannot see actual stuff happening at the ground level, and that's the technology that's getting interfered with that we're talking about. Right. So,
all right. So let's bring this into the automobile. So, you have a lot of cars now. Tesla for sure, because they're pushing updates to their vehicles, and they have Sentry mode and cameras, and you can literally start your car with your phone, and so that's all internet based. GM has had hotspots in their vehicles for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah.
That just their higher end stuff has had it for longer, but I know they've had hotspots in cars for a while now. This is a recurring revenue model for them, meaning you pay a monthly fee, you get that with it. Now we have a Lexus, and some of the newer Lexus with their remote service, meaning starting your car from your phone or checking the status of your vehicle or locating your vehicle. Now they're giving you, with that same monthly fee, a mobile hotspot.
Right. Well,
I don't know if Ford's doing it or not, but I would bet they are.
They are. You've got Ford Sync, right? That's
oh yeah. Well, that's the
sync
that's
technology
the
where you can use your
yeah.
tether. Yeah. I brought up something because I was interested in knowing how far we've come in the last 5 years with that technology. Because, like I said, GM with the OnStar, and so there were a few out there that were already working with it. But I was really surprised, man. And even the low, and I say low end, cheaper vehicles, price points. That is, I saw a list, like for example in Chevrolet, which makes sense because they started this. They were one of the leaders in this. Chevrolet Cruze, the Sonic, the Spark, the Trax. They
think about who buys those cars.
Yeah.
Younger people,
exactly.
College age maybe, teenagers. They're very tech focused. They've got a lot of tech going on.
Right.
That's appealing to them.
Right. And let's see, what vehicles have Wi-Fi in them? 5 inexpensive vehicles.
I know my friend has a Silverado that I think is a 17 or an 18, and it's got it.
Yeah, the Chevy Cruze, Chrysler 200.
Hey, friend, if you're watching this, I just mentioned you on the podcast.
There you go. Yeah. He knows who you are. The Audi A3. I mean, and when we say,
well, you would expect that from the higher end.
Right.
Stuff, right?
So,
yeah.
and I know that Mini now has launched something. They have it as well. So, I mean, this is so common these days. I mean, you have to, and we talked about this in a previous podcast too, that, you're going to have cars that you buy the car, it's going to come with, you can have an option as getting a phone with it,
Yeah.
or
right.
or whatever.
Or toaster.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, but just make sure, because I talked about this in battery health, that if you have to physically plug something in to the car, that you pull it out, you take that USB cable or adapter or whatever you have that's charging these devices out of those power sources, because it can drain your battery overnight, because some of those power sources, those ports actually stay hot.
They're always on. Yeah.
So anyway,
true.
that's my back to battery health advice.
Yeah. And as a general rule, you can check that when you turn the key off one time, but
Sure.
Typically the American manufacturers like Ford and GM leave them hot.
Mm-hmm.
At least they do on their larger vehicles.
My Mini Cooper S, it's a 2014, stays hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there you go.
Yep.
So there's so let's talk about applications. So there's the obvious use of a mobile hotspot, which is kids in the backseat going down the road watching, they're streaming videos, right? Whether it's Hulu or Netflix or Amazon.
That's right.
And it's kind of the babysitter, right? Like if we would have had that on summer vacation trips as a kid, oh my God, but yeah, so there's that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, now you got to think about, here's some things you may not consider. Say you have a teenager, you want to know where that vehicle is.
Yes.
That requires the use of the internet for pingbacks. Most of these cars have that capability now. It'll give you data. It hasn't been driven over a certain speed. Are the doors unlocked right now? Is the radio turned on?
OBD, guys.
Is the traction control turned off?
Yeah. OBD, guys.
Right. And it can report all that back through the use of mobile data or cellular
That's exactly
data, right?
Yep.
So, and then, you've got the business uses, right? So if you've got people, passengers that are trying to, do a little bit of work while you're going down the road, if you want Google Maps real-time traffic, that's coming in over the internet.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Most of these cars now are coming with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And I think Toyota just announced that today, I think I read this, that the next Highlander is going to have Android Auto native in it.
That's amazing.
Well, you're going to need to either use your phone's data or you're going to need to use the data of your car. If you have a Amazon Alexa device or an Apple Siri device and it's connecting to the internet, it's going to either use your phone or your mobile hotspot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you know what? And I wasn't surprised at how cheap or inexpensive some of these monthly rates were.
Yeah.
For the automotive side.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So here's what I would say to evaluate this. Okay. First of all, you need to understand that you can go buy a mobile hotspot. They're these little, sort of brick looking, kind of the size of a smartphone.
And we call them MiFis.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And they'll usually serve between 5 and 10 different connections, different devices, different people. You don't have to use the one that comes with the car. Now, if you're going to keep that car, if your plan is to have that car for more than 4 or 5 years, you need to consider that the technology in that car for wireless internet is probably going to be obsolete by the time you get to the end of that 4 or 5 year window.
That's right.
So, don't invest a whole bunch. If that's an upgrade and you got to pay more to have it and none of the other features that it comes with are of value to you, just go buy a personal hotspot device and throw it in the glove box or plug it into the cigarette lighter.
Right.
And leave it on when you're driving, right? And then, now you don't have to buy one from the same company that you get your cell phone service from.
Right.
Go out and price shop, find the one. Usually it's the unlimited stuff is less common these days. Although the manufacturers, if you go through them like GM or they do sometimes offer unlimited. I think Lexus does for a flat monthly fee.
Yeah.
But if you go the traditional route of just buying the portable hotspot, a lot of times it's per gig. It's per gigabyte downloaded.
Right.
They charge you, usually around $10 per gig.
Me personally, I'm on an unlimited.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Or if you have a corporate plan and your work's paying for it, go get the the one that's just the mobile hotspot that you throw in your back seat or in your glove box, and you're set.
That brings an interesting thought too, about how you're saying in 5 years that technology may be obsolesced. And it's just like a phone. We probably, what is the average phone? I mean, it's not the phone life, but the average amount of time that a consumer holds on to their current phone. It's like 2 years, 2 to 3 years, right?
Yeah. And the reason for that is because of not necessarily that the phone is no longer capable, but they push updates and software packages, and and some of this is intentional, invent or announce new platforms,
right?
And they require faster speeds that older phone is not capable.
Just can't be. And the same thing would be true for an automotive application,
right.
Where you have this in. So my question is that are they at the present time in some of the latest model vehicles, 2019's out, and of course you hear about 2020s already. I heard about the 2020s in 2018. Is this going to be a similar type situation where you can actually upgrade your onboard system in these cars, or is it going to be a situation where you really have to think about trading it in? I mean, to get the latest technology, is that something?
Well, that's why I personally would not invest in that upgrade package of internet or tech.
But we've talked about Tesla and what they do. I mean, they push software updates to their vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a similar type situation that we can expect in the future for that to happen?
Yeah, and that's gonna be a manufacturer decision, I think, because you could make it modular to some degree, meaning you plug in a package that's got a cellular chipset in it, and then you replace that down the road with a newer version.
Sure.
Tesla does a little bit of that now.
Right.
Like, they develop the cars, and then, once something becomes available to the consumer, you can go back to the dealer and they'll install it for you. It's already built into the car.
Right.
They also don't change the designs of their cars. That's a common trait of the higher end automobiles, the luxury lines, is they don't change the stylings or the designs of those cars as frequently.
Right. It's a big fear to me is that, because of the advancements in technology, what does that do to the automotive industry when it comes to, say, restorations? And, I don't think you're going to have the same attitude towards, I'm going to buy this car and I'm going to keep it and I'm going to pass it down to my kids.
I think that's going to be true for a lot of the newer electric stuff because there's nothing special about it once they all kind of get there.
Right.
Are
we going to have that? We're going to have that, 68 Camaro that just blows us away to hang on to for all of our lives,
And on the next podcast, buying a car for the design of the car versus the features on the dash.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what has happened.
That is exactly
we are
what's
now
happened.
buying cars for the technology incorporated in that. Does it have Bluetooth or Active Sync or Microsoft Sync or Ford Sync or whatever? And nobody even looks under the hood to see
Exactly, they don't. I mean, I have actually, just out of curiosity, been on, and this is recently, just being an observer of how the sales folks interact with the potential customers, and they do not lift the hood at all.
Don't.
It's not even the first thing they do. I mean, but I can tell you that 30, 40 years ago when I was shopping with my dad or my granddad, that's the first thing they did was pop the hood.
Well, people are keeping cars. They used to keep cars longer. They're not keeping cars as long now.
Yes, they did.
So,
and that's my point.
The engines last longer, so it's not a factor anymore. They're not buying for the longevity. They're buying for the tech, which is now we've come full circle in that conversation, which makes it a disposable product because they want the new version of technology in 3 or 4 years.
So our automobiles, here's the big question, and we'll probably head out on that note. Are cars going to be just like cellular devices where you upgrade every 2 years? And
forced upgrades.
And is the
planned obsolescence.
Right. And is the automotive industry going to accommodate the consumer in a way that makes that practice more attractive, like what kind of incentives do I get for trading it in? That changes the whole trade-in value factor. It changes the whole concept of trade-ins. It's
a completely different business model.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's where we're headed. That's the change in the industry. And, it's kind of the reason why we're bringing all this into this today, guys, because that's where the automotive industry has gone. It's technology-driven. It's creature comfort-driven. But there you have it. That's my thoughts on that. I think it's, I'm saying in 5 years, it'll be a completely different experience than we've
I hope we can come back to, in 5 years, we'll go back and visit this podcast on the podcast 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Or we could do it next week if time travel becomes a thing, right?
Yeah, we could actually, man.
I'm going to go DeLorean shopping. Hey, do you want to tell everybody where we at? Where to find us?
Yes, first of all, our website is www.partscounterguru.com. And you can reach us on Facebook. And we are at Parts Counter Gurus on Facebook. You can reach us on Instagram. We are at the Parts Counter Gurus. You can watch our podcast on our YouTube channel, which is Parts Counter Gurus, and you can follow the link on our website. We have some special tabs up at the top, somewhere up there. Well, actually, it won't be up. Well, you'll put it up there, won't you? Just a little link. Yeah, we'll have a link for them.
I'm looking at it right now.
Are you imagining what it could be? Yes.
No, it's right there.
Oh, is it? Okay, that's that Tholian.
You can't see it.
That's that Tholian Web again, man. But anyway, you like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, you can go to our website. You can really find anything you need there. You can reach our podcast, and you get podcast
Please
links.
Subscribe on YouTube.
Yes.
That helps us get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
It does.
It doesn't cost you anything. That's a great way to help us out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can go to mention on the podcast. There's a tab there. Anything we spoke of today or any previous podcast, you can go there and you can actually click on the link and purchase anything from there. We actually have a link to a number of other areas you can go purchase. You can leave a comment, ask us a question. There's an Ask Us a Question link or tab. You can email us through that.
I've got a new one.
What's that?
So people might ask us, Jay. They might say, they may wonder, well, how can I support you?
Ooh, yeah. Is that new?
Yeah. So we have pretty much everybody on planet Earth shops on Amazon.
That's right.
These days, right?
Yep.
So we have a banner. I think it's on the top right area of our website, partscounterguru.com.
Yep.
And it's just an Amazon banner. And if you click on that Amazon banner, and they sometimes have pictures of whatever the deal of the day is or whatever, just click on that banner and then go do your shopping on Amazon. So click through our site, go to Amazon, and buy whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Doesn't change the price of anything. You're still going to the same Amazon website. Amazon just sees us as the referrer, and we get little nod, little referral credit from Amazon. It helps us out a ton. Doesn't cost you a thing because you were already going to buy that cat tree from Amazon.
Right.
Or whatever. Doesn't have to be automotive based. It can be
anything.
Toilet paper, cereal, or it could be some chemical guy's car wash or whatever.
Yeah.
But
or
could be
at the
top right of our website.
Yeah, it could be a Linksys router,
So I will put a couple good routers with Wi-Fi and the repeater system, the whole home Wi-Fi that I was talking about, the mesh system. I'll put some of that stuff mentioned on the podcast page for today's episode.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. The other thing too is you can become a sponsor, become a fan.
Yep. Patreon is patreon.com/parts counter. I'll put the link up. Yeah. I can never remember that.
It's up there anyway. It's already there. There's a tab there. So here's the deal. I think it is, isn't it? Yes, it is. We need your support.
Yeah, it is. So you're right.
If in order for us to keep bringing this stuff to you, man, we need your help, and we'll probably keep doing it anyway. But we really want to bring you more content from different locations, a broader range of content. So we want your help. We want your help.
Just do the right thing and subscribe. Don't make me go back in time before you set your password and subscribe for you, because I will.
And who knows, there could be a hat in it for you.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, so the drawings are a thing, and as we get growing subscriber bases, we're going to reach into that grab bag from time to time. So, yes, please subscribe. You might win something. Anything else, Jay?
I don't really have anything, man, except for, we can end on the black hole if you want.
How would we end on a black hole?
Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, I just feel like I just came out of one.
All right. So,
well, actually, you know what, man?
Yeah?
Speaking of black holes, cars are kind of like black holes.
Okay,
and
how is that?
And we'll leave on that. You put a lot in, but nothing comes out. Oh, I stole that.
Okay,
I stole that from the mustache, man.
That's that's nice. I like that, and I don't like too many things that come out of the mustache. But yeah, we're referring to somebody. All right, everybody. That is Jay over there. I am Keith. Until next time, keep it under 88 miles an hour, and don't be a butthead.
Hey man, what do you know about the internet? What qualifies you to talk about this, huh?